Hey everybody, before we get started, I just want to remind you this episode is brought to you by our patrons like Ahio Comics, Qua, and Mr. Flores. If you like what we do and want to see us do more, consider supporting us on Patreon. You can get access to episodes early and lots of other goodies, and it would really help us out. Thanks for your support, everybody. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. It is time once again to talk about Star Wars Legion by Fantasy Flight Games. Yes, Pathfinder preview comes a day early. It might be because they're out in the wild and somebody's been leaking them. I know I posted on the forums that I saw a picture of most of the expansion pack spoiled, so I was probably going to do this video in the next couple of days anyway, but hey, FFG actually released the thing, so there's no reason not to just jump in. And so we will jump in and talk about the Rebels Pathfinders, their various upgrades and stuff and content, and we'll also talk a little bit at the end about the downed ATST, because that was also announced, but I figured it wasn't big enough for another video. Anywho, let's go ahead and jump into the old Pathfinderoos. Okay, so Rebel Pathfinders. They are a special forces unit. They have 4 miniatures. You're looking at 68 points for 1 wound, 2 courage, white defense dice. They have both surge to hit and surge to block. That's very lovely on a Rebel unit. And they are in fact speed 2. So pretty standard stuff, you know, for special forces. They're just as fragile, but they're a little more resilient when it comes to actually taking fire. And these guys actually get multiple surge conversions, which is really good because they use a lot of white dice. We'll talk about that more in a second. So the keywords, we have Danger Sense 3. We cover this pretty extensively with Jin, but there was a rules reference update, which did a lot of good stuff, like remove the overhang rule, well, or partially reduce the overhang rule, and some other stuff to do with vehicles, which is great because that was really hurting speeders even more than they don't need to be hurt. Also, you can repair repulsor vehicles now. Yay. I know that doesn't make a lot of sense that you can, you know, beam repairs via repair beams to a flying airspeeder, but that's really going to help with, like, land speeders and stuff, which you should totally be able to repair. So it's a weird abstraction thing. Anyway, they also clarified Danger Sense, which is that, yes, whenever the opportunity to arise for tokens, you can choose to remove or keep any number of those tokens. So, for instance, if you're standing next to a unit that has Inspire 2, and you only want to remove 1 token, you can just do that. You roll a rally, you get to roll all your rallies, and then decide, no, I want to keep 1 suppression. So, yeah, Danger Sense is pretty good. It's going to keep these guys alive, because otherwise they are fragile as fuck. They also have Dauntless, which is after you rally, if you are suppressed but not panicked, you can gain 1 suppression token to perform a free move action. Remember, this is after you rally, so first of all, if you're at risk of being panicked or whatever, or you want to activate your Dauntless move, you can choose whether or not to remove your suppression, and even if you get enough suppression to become panicked, by default, you will not if you use Dauntless, because that's checking for panic and suppression occurs after you rally also. And I believe the RG also clarifies when multiple stuffs have the same trigger, the executing player gets to figure it out. So if you would proc to check for panic, then you'd proc to check for Dauntless. So this means that if they're suppressed, they can still get a move action, so they can still get 2 actions, which is cool. And also they have Infiltrate, which we talked a lot about with Jin. For upgrades, they have their choice of heavy weapons, trainings, comms, gear. We clarify that pistol is the Arsenal upgrade. Thanks, Rules Reference Guide. I like Sidearm better, but I guess if you're going to put heavy weapons and stuff in there, it makes sense. And grenades. For weapons, they have 2. They have the Unarmed Dice, which is just, 1 black, pretty typical. Though they have offensive surge now, so, they can punch okay. And they also have the A300 rifles, which you may recognize from some other Rebels minis, which gives them 2 white dice at range 1 to 3. So first of all, before we even get into their special weapon options or anything, let's just look at these guys. So, 68 points, that's a little costly. Hold on, because everybody uses strike teams with snipers, I don't remember the cost for a regular Commandos unit off the top of my head. Okay, so that's 8 more points than Commandos. Commandos are just as defensive. They have low profile, which means that they have, whenever they have cover, they always have heavy cover is the best way to say that. They have Scout 2, so they can scooch after performing a move. I would say that technically Infiltrate, for most cases, is better than Scout. And Rebel Commandos have Sharpshooter 1, which means they reduce the defender's cover by 1. They have the same unarmed dice, and they have the A280 blaster rifle, which means they have black dice at range 1 to 3 with a surge. So for 8 more points, you're getting double the dice even if they're lower, but you still have surge. So it's been ages, but I remember at the time there was a lot of virtual ink spilled about how phenomenal the fleet troopers were at damage, and that they were technically hands down the best damaging unit there is. The only thing that limited them from like completely taking over the game was their range. Hey, these guys are range 1 to 3 and they have the double dice, okay? They're a lot more expensive, but still. So their core offensive potential, pretty good. With Danger Sense, you can give them a little suppression. We'll talk a little bit about some of the training upgrades they want to take, but Duck and Cover goes very well on them because that gives them suppression to worry about. There are some other options they have which are useful. But in terms of just a 4-man rebel unit, throwing 8 white dice at range 1 to 3, pretty gnarly. Pretty gnarly. With surge conversion. They have surge to hits. Their main defect is that they're swingy. Their defense is swingy and their offense is swingy. You're going to want to try and pad that out. They don't have sharpshooter. They don't have any pierce intrinsically. And spoilers, they don't get any pierce either. So yeah, their dice are very swingy. But Dauntless gives them mobility. Danger Sense gives them a little bit enhancing. Like, I've heard some people say, ooh, Pierce is really bad for them. Not if you have Danger Sense procced. You can roll extra blocks. It's a bit like Impervious in that sense, only it has a different trigger. And then they have Infiltrate. So this is a pretty scary unit to put on the field in the first place, because these guys can basically, they can do what is called in other games Deep Strike. They can appear anywhere on the board outside of range 3 of enemy units, which means if you deploy them first, they can literally deploy anywhere. But you actually probably want to save them for last, so you always deploy them in an advantageous position to pressure your enemy, whether that's at long or close range. With comms upgrades, you don't have to put them with Jin. You can give them long-range comms. It's a little expensive, but it's there. You could also give them comms jammers and just be like, neener, neener. You can't issue orders down here. And some other fun stuff. With gear upgrades, I don't know, you probably want them to stay mobile, so you might want to do environmental gear, but I'm pretty sure, I'd have to double check if the REG clarified this, I'm pretty sure Scout still works, so recon intel might be good. You can teleport them at range 3 and then scooch up a speed 1 move. You know, you can scooch them into range 2, basically, which will be hella scary with one of their arsenal upgrade options we'll talk about in a second. The other thing, obviously, is maybe emergency stims, because you really want these guys to stay alive. They're losing a lot of offense per mini. So, yeah, that's about it. Grenades, no idea if you want to even bother with grenades. Like, okay, so you can, theoretically, if you're doing CQC, you might do the frags, but yeah, I mean, other than that, they have no anti-impact potential. Normally, this isn't a problem, because generally the game doesn't favor vehicles right now. AT-RTs have kind of fallen out of favor. They and bikes are some of the most flexible units that people used, but I'm seeing them less and less in like major tournament lists and discussions of cool things we're doing because they're so old. The AT-ST and the T-47 were never super popular because I kind of cottoned onto this on the forums and stuff, but I think that when this game was tested and designed, the developers were playing with vehicles just for the sake of playing with vehicles, right? They weren't necessarily playing in that ultra-efficient competitive mindset. And so vehicles are usually built to counter vehicles, right? That's why they have oodles of impact. That's why most vehicles have white dice, but they rely on armor to protect them. The problem is that there are a couple of very cheap impact accesses in this game, and there are some nasty commanders with stuff like Pierce who can get in there and do some nasty damage to your vehicles, and your vehicles don't necessarily have like Pierce or Sharpshooter or whatever to do damage to infantry. So at the moment, it's not very efficient. Hopefully, though, they can correct that a little bit. Anyway, we've talked enough about Pathfinders. Let's move into talking about some of their upgrades. All right, so next up, I wasn't going to say first up, but next up, let's talk about their arsenal upgrades, the A300 configs. So this is a dual-sided card. You can choose either side to equip, and with a recover action, you can flip it to the other side. These are not free, unlike Jin, who has kind of like it's a weird way to give her ranged attack. She has to choose between the close or the far. This is an extra, so technically you don't have to pay for this if you just want to cruise on the 2 whites at range 1 to 3. That said, for only 6 points and the flexibility this gives you, I think you're going to want to find the room in your list for this. So you got 2 different versions. You've got the short and long, and remember, you get to pick which one you start on. The long-range config is a single white die, but it's range 1 to 4. This is pretty freaky, okay? So these guys, as an infantry unit, for just 6 extra points, can engage enemies at range 1 to 4. And now, yeah, it's white dice, but they do have surge. I mean, Imperials are rolling white dice with Surge. And these guys have an extra range on them. That's pretty good, I think. That's a lot of distance you're going to get out of that. You're going to do a lot of long-distance engagements. And when we talk about their heavy weapon ad minis, who are also range 1 to 4, I'll spoil it, that's also pretty gnarly. Just these guys' ability to take pot shots at range 4, and their ability to infiltrate, which means they can appear on the far side of line-of-sight blocking terrain, which would normally keep your snipers from making, turn 1 suppression shots. That's pretty nasty, like I said. On the other hand, the short range is only range 1 to 2, but it's a single red die. This means at range 1 to 2, you're rolling 4 red dice with Surge for 6 points. Because you can easily get these guys up that close if you have the time to recover anyway to flip it, or if you start your playing this way. That's really nasty. The only thing that keeps this from being, truly terrifying is no Pierce. But still, red dice with Surge. You know how good those are from DLTs. That's accurate. That's hella accurate, okay? I'd have to run it through the probability calculator, because there's that, but I'm pretty sure that's a lot of expected hits, once again, with no sharpshooter and no Pierce on their own. I don't know how much you're going to convert that damage, but that's a lot. That's a high likelihood of suppression, and hey, you never know. Even with 50-50, defense saves, people can blank out, and if you're fighting rebels who are using white dice, or any of the other handful of Imperial units who use white dice, that's pretty nasty. Those are pretty nasty shots in there. So, again, this makes these guys an insanely flexible unit. At range 1 to 3, whether or not you pay these 6 points, you get 2 white dice. So a default unit has 8 white dice. If you have the long range set up at range 4, you can then still make a 4 white dice shot with Surge conversions. And if you have short, if they get up close to 2, or you get up close to 2, you switch that to red dice. Very flexible, very nasty. I think that these guys are not necessarily going to get played a lot, but I do think people are going to have to think about what their response is if people start playing with Pathfinders, right? And it's unique to Pathfinders because Death Troopers don't do this. They don't have infiltrate, okay? They do something completely different, which we'll talk about when we get to them. So, this is great. I love that we're getting this kind of tactical flexibility. All right, let's move into those heavy weapon options we talked about. So, in another divergence, the heavy weapon options for these guys are both unique minis. You can choose from unique Bistan and unique POW. This means that if you actually ran 3 lists of Pathfinders, not that I think you would at 68 points, but if you decided to go crazy, you could not include a 3rd heavy weapon mini, which is interesting, very interesting to their design. I guess we'll tackle this in alphabetical order. Poor Bistan. People were like, "Oh my god, it's going to be an ion weapon that doesn't exhaust." Nope. For 32 points, I mean, just alone, no other upgrades, no other you don't add your arsenal upgrade for your different weapon configs, nothing. Bistan puts you at 100 points. That's a whole 1/8 of your army. Now, while yes, he is another rifleman, this is important to remember. He doesn't have to use the weapon on his card. He can also use default cards. He could throw grenades, or he could use the arsenal upgrades, or he could just use the default rifles. So you're not stuck with this, but he adds 1 mini. He has 1 black, 4 whites at range 1 to 4. Impact 1, Ion for 32 points. It's exhaust. If vehicles were more common in this game, Bistan is great. That's an Impact 1 and an Ion and a lot of dice to mod to get those shots. And in long-range configs, you're talking about a range 4 shot. Hey, this guy's wielding a slightly better Z6. There's a black die in there, and it has impact. So you can get some roll some numbers. You can probably do some damage to a vehicle on surprise. Get them in their weak spot because they're maneuverable. Like if the occupier gets popular. Basically, I'll put it this way. Normally, Pathfinders have no response to armor other than Bistan option. And because armor's not popular, Bistan's coming again. If Pathfinders start to kick butt in the meta, I will expect maybe once the occupier comes out, you might see some people try to run that with some certain upgrades so that they can get a little anti-infantry power and basically assault Pathfinder positions. Then you might see people switch up their Pathfinder strats to accomplish Bistan. Because, you get in those side arcs on an occupier, that ups your impact to 2. You've got impact 2, you're rolling a fuck ton of white dice. You've got an Ion, which will super slow down those units and make it hard for them to hard for them to catch you in their arcs and stuff. That's okay. And you can possibly be taking actions to reconfigure to recover, basically, so you can reconfigure, so you can reload Bistan. But still, I just think for the point value, it's a lot. It's a very niche utility. On the other hand, POW is great. At range 1 to 4, he gives you a red and a white. He adds Inspire 1, and then he adds Leader. So he becomes your unit leader, so you don't need to worry about Bistan, for example, could get force choked off or something, or caught out and firing. POW cannot be removed that way, so you always lose him last, which is good because you got a red or white and he's range 1 to 4. So first off, I think POW has 2 uses because some people were confused about the Inspire. Also, POW's 22 points. That means that with Reconfigure and with the Overwatch upgrade, whether or not you want to take that, you're looking at your round 100 points. That's why, again, I say Bistan's a little pricey. But POW has 2 uses. 1, he's the closest rebels are going to get to the DLT in a long time. Okay? You got that? So, he's got a red and he's got range 1 to 4. With Surge Conversion, you're talking about fairly guaranteed suppression. Throw in that long range config, that's 1 red, 4 white dice. Again, it's swingy, but you've got that 1 red dice, so you're always getting your damage in. So you're almost always, anyway, because there is still a blank face on a red die. It's just ridiculously improbable. But you're almost always looking at 1 suppression, 1 hit, so it's a possible damage unless they have cover or something. And then you've got the 5 whites for the swing. And Rebel players run Z6s, so I'm sure they're no strangers to swingy dice. So that's the first thing that POW does. He gives you that little taste of accuracy in your big spread of weapons there. Even if you're not running the long-range configs, he still gives you that option like a DLT. The second is, with Inspire and Leader, you don't have to use Infiltrate to teleport Pathfinders onto objectives that are far. You can use them to just push them on a slightly further distance outside of your, I forgot the word for a second, the deployment zone. So, that means that you can use Pathfinders as literal Pathfinders, and because of their danger sense, because of their ability with Dauntless to move even possibly while suppressed, and duck and cover, obviously, is another thing, you can make these guys literal Pathfinders and send them in advance of your primary force. And with Inspire, POW will help your units who are falling behind keep up. If you wanted to run 2 sets of Pathfinders this way, that's a totally viable option, but also other stuff. Another interesting thing is that, actually, hold on, I gotta double check something, because I'm like, hold on, I don't remember my own whatchamadoodles. Okay, so Jin doesn't have, Inspire by default, but she can gain Inspire with, Trust goes both ways, so I think, considering like I said, you're riding that Razor's Edge of suppression, I think POW with Inspire and then Jin works as a good team if you're going to send them on deep cover. But yeah, so because of their really long engagement range, you can deploy Pathfinders as kind of like an ambush buffer, send them to push ahead, pick a point, wait. If your opponent comes into range, you're going to pelt them and you're really going to slow them down, and you might even hurt them a lot. At the very least, like I said, you're gonna start checking out suppression. And here's the thing: snipers are really good because of their infinite range. They still require line of sight. They're not going to do a lot of damage, and because they're probably in the back because they are in fact super fragile. They've only got a couple of hit points in. You're not going to use them to directly engage with certain objectives. Pathfinders, on the other hand, can engage with objectives. So. They've got a lot of mobility there with these 2 guys. Like I said, I think POW, not just because he's cheaper, but also because of his dice setup, is an obvious winner. If you're, like I said this, I think, on the forums, if I was playing a game with a guy I knew would take armor, like, there are people who really do like the ATST, even if it's not ultra tournament efficient. So if I was playing a specific guy who I knew would use those a lot, I'd Bistan. Like a tourney list, though, I wouldn't lean into Bistan. He's fun as like an option, but yeah, anyway. Let us talk about some upgrades. Okay, so now let's talk about upgrades. So the slide will show off the one new upgrade we know of, which is Overwatch. Called it. Gain Sentinel. Called it. 4 points. Didn't call that exact thing, but I know that it was pretty slimline. So for 4 points, you gain Sentinel, which makes your standby range 1 to 3. I mean, training's a really competitive slot, so for these guys, duck and cover is probably just as good, but if you want to, like, camp objectives, the fact that they have 2 white dice, we already talked about, once again, like, how mathematically fleet troopers are supposed to be really grand. The thing that really kept them is the fact that most enemies could shoot at range 1 to 3, and they were only 1 to 2. Once again, Pathfinders, well, they got their 3rd range band back. So, on them, nasty. It's much better, I think, on Death Troopers, who have the ability to gain that aim token after they stand by, and they have Precise 2, and they also have range 1 to 3 weapons, which are black dice, and they have conversions. So suck it, everybody who said Death Troopers weren't going to be able to fort up and stand by. You were wrong. But they definitely have their place on Pathfinders. Like I said, if you wanna get into position, camp out with these guys, take pot shots at range 1 to 4, or like I said, just stand by and be like, okay, if you guys want to get in my fucking engagement range, come at me, nerds. I'll shoot at you with lots of dice. So Overwatch is a pretty good upgrade. It's pretty cheap to get Sentinel on a wide variety of units. So obviously it's useless on Wookiees and Royal Guards because they're close quarters focused. Like, if you're a Wookiee, are you really gonna pay 4 extra points so you can stand by into a bowcaster shot? No. I don't know if it's any good as an alternative to duck and cover on current special forces. So I think it's mostly made for these 2 guys, but it's good to have in the toolkit. I love the ability to switch up your keywords for just a few points. We also know about other upgrades in the pack, because there's no point in talking about Overwatch too much longer because it's really long. These guys do come with duck and cover, though, like I said, that's twice as much as Overwatch. That's pretty expensive. They also come with frag grenades, so they're another source if you're trying to get them for all your core units. They do come with another copy of Comms Relay, which I'm very surprised about, but hey, now you don't have to buy quite so many sets of specialists. Also, I don't have it from the spoiler, but there's in the spread, I'm pretty sure there's another gear upgrade, but I know from some stuff done with Jin Unboxing, that was actually on the 5th Trooper podcast. Check out their channel, 5th Trooper Network. I actually like their stuff. They do good work. Both with, like, DL Report and podcasts. They're a little bit more into the tournament scene than I am, which is, I'm not always interested in listening in, but also it's good to hear at least the, practical what people are doing with this game. But they did an unboxing of Jin, because one of their hosts got her early, and she has a recon intel, so I'm going to assume these guys have a recon intel, because otherwise I don't really know what's in the pack with them. And yeah, that's the upgrades for these guys. Some of them, I think, just, they make sense to, because Legion is very good about making sure you have enough copies of your upgrades. I think it's good that some of these are distributed, another source of frags, another source of comms, really, another source of recon intel. Very useful, I think, depending on if you're not buying a lot of sets of other ones, but you want lots of upgrades. Hopefully you did not overbuy another unit so you can get more recon intels. And that's it for these guys. So let's roll into my final slide. So yeah, I didn't build big special assets for the downed ATST. I'm sorry, but I'm gonna be honest, I don't care that much. So the downed ATST is basically a terrain expansion. It's a neutral expansion. You buy it, you get a lovely big blob of ATST terrain, which you have to paint yourself. It cost as much as a normal ATST, but considering people were buying spare ATSTs to convert into terrain anyway, I feel like this has a market, obviously. On that respect, I do hope they do more terrain upgrades. I do hope they aren't quite as expensive in future. But the other thing is, it comes with like a scenario pack similar to, I think they've been, some of the more narrative missions they've been doing. So it comes with, well, all the cards that are previewed are labeled Act 1, and it comes with 6, so we're assuming it's Act 1, Act 2. So, there's basically, like, 3 sets. There's the actual downed ATST terrain, which, I don't think is that impressive as, like, a Battlefield card. It's just, if you get that card, you set the ATST in the middle, right? So, that's not super impressive. And it has, like, flavor text on it. There is also, there's going to be the objective card, which requires the downed ATST, which is secure the intel, so Act 1, which means that you have to use troopers or special forces, I should say. Commanders or operatives need not apply to basically extract data while you're in base contact with the downed ATST, and then claim the objective token. And then you need to run away with the token until the end of the game, basically. At the end of the game, if they control a unit with a claim objective, you get 1 token. Since you can only hold on to, you can only generate 1 token at a time, this seems very swingy. And then it's important to note that they have the forces converge, so that has an interesting thing, which is the blue player must play rebels, and red player must play rebels, and blue player must play Imperials. And then during Act 1, each unit that is defeated, and each unique unit that is defeated, and each unique upgrade that is defeated is set aside and cannot be included in an army for Act 2. So the basic design seems to be that these are set up to be like, there's Act 1 and Act 2 cards. I think in this case they'll be linked, but theoretically, Forces Converge, for instance, doesn't have to be thematic to this. It's just, it can be. I think you could theoretically put it in other ones, but it's obviously not for tournament games. It's for building narrative play. The downed ATST appears in the middle. You do Forces Converge, so you have to build in this kind of narrow U shape on the ends of the board and scooch forward to get the thing in the center, and then you have a very specific way of handling it. We'll just have to see what the Act 2 type cards are. I think this is an interesting kind of narrative thing they're doing. If they do more like these, hopefully cheaper, like I said, where you can get different acts, you can jump from Act, 1 is secure the intel, Act 2 is evacuate or something interesting like that. You can build a fun little event out of it. Otherwise, yeah, it's niche. On the other hand, it's niche. If you don't want to buy terrain and you don't want to invest in narrative scenarios, you can completely skip it for once. There's a whole $50 you don't have to spend. Other than that, now that Jin and Pathfinders are both spoiled, and I believe that they should be officially releasing, obviously, once again, the street date is a little leaky, but that should be this Thursday. Those will release. So hopefully over the next couple of weeks, we'll probably skip a week. Maybe they'll give another announcement, God knows. But we'll probably skip a week, and then we'll start getting into Krennic and Death Trooper previews, which I'm super excited about because I've said this before, but especially now with Pathfinders previewed and looking at the Death Troopers, while I see how they're similar, with their reconfigure weapons, they kind of play with suppression in weird ways. They both super benefit from that new Overwatch card. But tactically, they're very different because Death Troopers don't have Infiltrate. They cannot just teleport where you need them on the board. They have to, advance across the board on foot, and then when they get to a position, they will secure the shit out of it with that, stuff. I think they were going to work very well in Entourage for Krennic, because Krennic's not super expensive. So you can, take these guys, and you can still keep your sniper teams. You could still technically run 3 sniper teams if you wanted. But these Death Troopers can, scooch along with him and secure the location. They're very useful and handy, and I want to see what kind of upgrades they are, and I want to see what their heavy weapons are, because I think only one of them is unique, and the other is they get a DL19 thing. Anywho, that's the episode. Hope you enjoyed that. Thanks so much for your time. Hope this wasn't too super long, but I did have a lot of stuff to cover. There's a lot of new stuff in the RRG, clarifies this and that about transport and other stuff, so go ahead and check it out. That'll be active in the next couple of days. And as always, stay tuned for more news. Stay tuned for more X-Wing news, which I will cover. I'm also hoping to maybe get another L5R video essay done this week, but maybe not. I got other stuff to do, too. We're a busy channel sometimes. Anyway, go ahead and let you go. And remember, if you like this video, give it a like. If you have any comments about these units or any of those other things, the down to DST, the RG changes, go ahead and leave those in the comment section down below. You can also check out our Discord, which is a great way to get in touch with the community all the time. Also, if you're new here and have not already, please subscribe to this channel so you can always get the latest videos we put out. And don't forget to hit that bell for notifications so you always know when we post a new video. And, of course, like it says at the front of the show, you can consider supporting us on Patreon. You can get access to episodes early, lots of other stuff. Helps us out. Helps the channel grow. Anyway, that's it, everybody. So hope you don't get too bogged down in enemy territory. And, hey, I ain't no senator's son. It ain't Sheev.